This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
Welcome everybody to You've Got to Be Kidding Me for September 2002. I'm Garrett Kidney and I'm joined as always by my brilliant co-host Liam Jones. Liam, as you are now a year older, how are you doing?
I'm a year older and a year wiser, for sure.
You will be spending more of this year of your life spent watching TNA than you have spent any other year of your life, so I'd imagine it's going to be the best year of your life, right?
It's going to be a year of my life. I mean, maybe it won't be. God forbid. Maybe it won't be a year of my life.
We do have to discuss planning if one of us die and how the podcast continues.
I assume we call in Sean Cedar or Kelly, or they replace both of us and they just continue on because one of us can't bother to go on by ourselves.
Yeah, the grief will be overwhelming. We'll also have to discuss the Patreon revenue, of course.
Well, it goes 100% to the original member, to the surviving member of the team, surely.
Well, we could put half into a fund in the name of the person who died.
No, I like to think of it as a waiting game.
Wait, yeah, you're just waiting for me to die.
Yes, because I'm younger.
Plan all along.
But we jest about it now, and it's like one day, God forbid, it like all blows up to like an obscene level, and it's like actually a large amount of money. It's like, oh no, we signed the contracts early on.
You must contribute half of it toward my children.
You must contribute it to. Oh, fuck, I'd rather you just have it. I got no one and nothing.
Well, to be fair, neither do I. That's the reason I said children?
Yeah. I don't know. I'll give it to Ken.
Yeah. My brother Ken.
Yeah, why not?
He can have all the money.
At least you got siblings to dedicate it to.
That's true.
I suppose I do too, but I don't want to say it's strange. Strange seems strong. Just not... This is not TNA. This is just too personal.
Taking a sudden and personal turn.
I know. Well, to be fair, we talked about birthdays, which inherently is a door opening up to a personal topic, I guess.
Yeah, and leads us inevitably toward death, which is what all birthdays do.
Because we're both just full of pessimism.
Yes, we are people inevitably marching toward our doom and demise. It's fun. It's a good time.
I mean, yeah. The only point, just survive long enough, I guess.
Did you have a nice birthday?
Yeah, it was fun. We just got out of lockdown in time.
Oh, that's good. Got
to actually do some stuff.
And so we're basically, we do still have some restrictions, but we're not quite in lockdown anymore. And it's like, we're never going back into lockdown. That's a thing that's pretty clear. So it's like, cases are rising every day, but we're not going back into lockdown because we will head them off with vaccination eventually. One will hope. But it's just like, nah, we're not doing it.
Imagine being vaccinated. Not me.
To be fair, I'm only half vaccinated.
Could you send the other one to me? I think I've already said this. I'll still take it.
No, my vaccine.
No, it'll be like 90% vaxxed each. It's fine.
No, I want to be 100% vaxxed.
Oh, Mister has to be 100% vaccinated. Ooh.
Though to be fair, it's not 100%, is it? It's like 97% or something. I want to be 97% vaxxed.
It's only 7% more better than the one vaccination.
I want it. It's mine.
Yeah, you get to have a whole 7% increase. I get to sit on 0 instead of 90.
It's quite selfish of me, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I'm very greedy.
What else has been going on in the... What's been happening in the news?
Not much. Olympics is still going on. I believe we discussed it on...
Oh, should we get a tally update?
Yeah, because we discussed it on, I think, the Patreon. Which one? It was one of the... Either watch along or the Monday War Games.
I think it was the watch along.
So, yeah, we won a gold medal in rowing, which is nice. We actually won a gold medal. It's always nice to win medals instead of not win medals, because it's it's the first men to win a gold medal in Ireland since 1992. Michael Carruth in the boxing.
We have 10.
Oh, Mr. We have 10 over here. And most of them are just your one Titmus winning all of them in the swimming.
Yeah. It's just what we do.
Very good at swimming.
I watched some field hockey the other day.
Oh, we're okay at field hockey, except in this Olympics where we've been actually quite bad at field hockey.
And the game I watched, we beat Japan in the women's field hockey.
Yeah, it's the Australian women and the Netherlands women are the field hockey kings. Or queens.
Oh, queens.
I was never able to play field hockey because we did it in PE in school once. and like it requires you moving the stick back and forth because you can't hit it with the same side of the stick twice. You always have to hit it with the other side of the stick. And my brain just could not wrap itself around that concept.
But you just move it over the ball.
Yeah, but my brain could not wrap itself around this
Like, you
concept.
don't even have to, like, move the stick around. You just go up, over.
What about my total lack of coordination, being unable to understand this idea do you not understand here, Liam?
I played it a little bit. Not a ton, but it was fun. We had a field hockey field at our school grounds. So, like an AstroTurf field, which had a soccer and a field hockey field.
Yeah, we also had a quote-unquote AstroTurf field, which was really just a pit at the back of the school.
We were pretty good about that kind of stuff. We had basketball courts, cricket cages, long jump sand pit.
You had a long jump sand pit?
Yeah, it wasn't like a great one, but it was one, like, when we were younger it was pretty good, but like it got no upkeep on it, so it kind of just turned into a big sand pit.
Actually, now that I think of it, I think we also had a long jump sand pit.
Yeah, it wasn't like a good quality one.
It's literally just a pit.
And the problem is, like, I guess it's like with Americans too, like when they have their football field, it's like, that's a lot of space. And like the same thing with an AFL oval, that's a lot of space that you need to have an AFL oval on the back of your school.
Yeah, we actually had two pitches. We had one like soccer pitch and a GAA pitch across the road. So I can't give out. Our school was relatively well equipped as well.
And as soon as I left my school, they got like a full gymnasium set too. They had like an indoor one, which they mostly used for like very occasionally with sports, but it was mostly for like announcements and devotion, because it was a religious school. But and any theater performances. But then they added like a full basketball gymnasium, like the year I left.
Yeah, we had one of those too, but a few years after I left, the roof got blown off it. In a storm, literally.
I was in a house that had the roof blown off of it once.
That sounds terrifying.
It was. I thought I was going to die.
There's a lot of you dying on this podcast so far.
I'll tell you, this is what the story was, right? I was at my grandparents', and they had a house that they built that was like on stilts kind of deal. Like it was up off the ground. Basically because like they lived through flooding, so they were like, yeah. And I remember I was in their lounge room and probably watching Naruto, and it was really windy, like really, really windy, right? And suddenly all of the boards on the floor like started going up, like a giant, like a dome, like came out from under it, right? So like, so it was like a foot up from where it normally would be, and I'm like, that doesn't feel right. So I ran into the kitchen where my grandfather was, and as like we both were like, oh, things are getting weird right now. The roof started to tear off piece by piece, and yeah, like a solid chunk of the roof, like in the kitchen area, just was gone, and it was like a mini tornado that ran through.
Did you get blown away with it?
Yes, I died that day.
We've never had a tornado, so I've never had a tornado warning.
Well, we didn't have I've never had a fucking tornado warning either.
Just the tornado. Just a regular old tornado showed up.
Yeah, it was just wind that turned into a tornado for a brief second, and it just happened to be over our house.
Well, you're in the middle of Twister. Have you ever seen Twister?
I have not seen Twister.
Ugh.
But then for like the next 6 years, I had a real big fear of wind. You wouldn't believe it.
Well, how does the fear of wind manifest itself?
Well, when you hear that there's a lot of wind outside, you go, oh, fuck, the roof might blow off.
You're walking outside and like there's a sudden gust of wind and you hide under a tree, which is probably not a good place to hide.
I wasn't afraid of a breeze.
I don't know.
I was afraid of gale force wind.
Well, to be fair, being afraid of gale force wind is probably quite wise.
It's all quite wise.
The world is a horrible place that tries to destroy you.
I didn't like storms for a long, long time. Now I don't give a shit. But for a long, long time, storms really freaked me the fuck out.
Would you like just hide under your bed and cower?
No, but I definitely had earplugs.
Oh.
Because the sound would just give me like terrible anxiety.
I guess that's understandable when your roof gets blown off.
And then, not to mention, that night that it happened, like I got picked up and taken home. And then my parents abandoned me in the house to go back to the location where shit went down to help out. But then they left me in a house alone with gale force wind going outside. And I was sitting there like, what the fuck?
That probably really reinforced the fear then.
Yeah, right? And it was only like, at that point it was like 11 p.m. So it was like the dead of night at this point, because Like, I was watching Naruto, so it had to be at least Toonami. Toonami era time period for Cartoon Network. So yeah, it was about like 11, pitch black. I'm just sitting in my house as this wind's happening after I had this traumatic experience.
Well, everyone knows when you have a traumatic experience, you have to reinforce and internalize the trauma instead of dealing with it.
Yeah. I should have just gone out there and sat in the wind all night and like just defeated it right there.
I believe that's what a Naruto character would have done.
Yeah, true. What would you know about Naruto?
Hey, I've watched 30 episodes and still pay for Crunchyroll.
To be fair, you did get through a lot of it.
We watched a decent amount of Naruto, I'll have you know.
Hey, you know, if we like do Naruto reviews behind the paywall, you can write it off as a tax thing.
That's true. I could write off my freaking Crunchyroll as a tax deductible.
There you go. Coming soon, we'll do every 10 episodes of Naruto. We'll review it.
Just to help with my tax, nothing else.
Yeah. And to actually make us do it, I suppose. Alright, we've done 10 minutes of bullshit. We can move on to the TNA now.
Yeah, enough of Liam's childhood traumas. Let's actually move on to...
This is just my therapy session.
Let's move on to Liam's adult traumas caused by TNA wrestling.
These shows, yes.
We are talking about September 2002, which was an interesting month for TNA because they only ran 2 shows, so this will probably be a relatively shorter show. As usual, if you'd like to support the show, you can subscribe at patreon.com/kiddingme, where you can get access to our show notes, access to our star ratings, access to written reviews, access to a watch-along of NWA TNA pay-per-view number 13, which we'll also talk about today, and
Naruto reviews.
And if you want Naruto reviews, we'll do Naruto reviews, as well as the Monday War Game series, where we talk all about the 2010 Monday Night War. So all that's available on Patreon. Go get it. 3 tiers. Well-named tiers as well, might I add. The King of the Mountain tier. You can get the Impact Zone tier. You get the Dixieland tier.
And, you know, be the King of the Mountain.
You're the King of the Mountain of my heart, Liam.
Wow. You're the King of the Ring. Couldn't think of another king-faced thing.
So to bring forward from last week, or the last episode, 2 weeks ago's episode, we were talking about how TNA, their financial investor had pulled, Health South had pulled the funding from TNA, so TNA were desperately scrambling for money, which is the reason they didn't run shows for the first basically 2 weeks of this month. Well, the second week they were never going to run a show because it would have fallen on 9/11, which would have been the first anniversary of 9/11 when 9/11 was particularly raw. So
a little too soon.
Yeah, that's not a period. And it was apparently like DirecTV is like, we just don't want anything violent on the airs on 9/11, so take the week off. But they also took the week before off. They did an X Division special, which we're not going to talk about. It's just a bunch of matches that already aired.
I might go back and watch it though, because I saw that there was like some interview stuff.
Oh yeah, there's little interstitials where they introduce the matches.
Yeah, so maybe I'll go back and I'll watch that.
So do you remember where you were on 9/11, Liam? Let's get heavy. Let's stay heavy. Childhood traumas at 9/11.
Oh, that would have been probably the same year.
All of the traumas happening at once in Liam's life.
I vaguely remember it. I was also 4.
Which is a bit too young.
Yeah, I think I vaguely remember like seeing stuff about it on TV, but not understanding what it was.
Like I do remember like seeing, like coming home from school and the news being on, like seeing it and being like, I don't think my tiny brain could entirely process, because I would have been 10, which is certainly old enough to understand what's happening, but also, or 9 even, it was 2001, but not old enough to like really understand the depth of the consequences of what was happening. And I was like, what? It was more shock, but then I don't remember much of the aftermath or anything like that. I do remember our teacher in 5th class like literally teaching us about Iraq to try and like combat all the racism and horrible stereotypes. He's like, I'm going to teach you about Iraq and the Middle East so that you're not all horrible racists towards that area.
That's such an interesting dynamic for a teacher to take at the time.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. That like they were so proactive in seeing what was going to come out of this like kind of thing that was happening, and to be like, I need to like actively counteract this new wave of information that they're going to be hit with like actual fact and things that's happening.
Yeah, that seems to be a good way to approach teaching, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's just from my experience with my teachers, it's like never something I would have expected, like, for a teacher to make that kind of proactive decision. That's just super interesting to me. Yeah,
and like I think it's just because it was current, that was part of it as well. It's like it's always in the news, so it's like it's we're going to do this as part of, like, because in primary school, you know, the curriculum is a lot looser than secondary school, so it's just like today we're going to talk about Iraq, And he was big into Everest as well, so he'd always be talking about Everest expeditions and all that fun stuff. But yeah, it is a good approach to teaching, isn't it? To be like, all right, let's make sure my kids aren't assholes and make sure they're not horrible racists and make sure they're not taking it out on the entire people of the Middle East for what a few people did.
Like, I'm gonna, like, that's just super interesting to me. It's not something that I don't think I've ever encountered. Maybe I have and just didn't even realize it, but yeah, I don't, maybe it's because I don't know, I don't want to blame it all on, religious school, blah, 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 but like, I think they had a fairly strict thing of what they were going to talk about and what they were allowed to talk about, and rarely reached out beyond that. Although I did have a couple of teachers that were like, that bucked the trend a little bit, but as much as they could within the context of the school, I guess.
Were you ever thought about other religions?
Do you want to the actual answer?
Yeah.
I never believed it. I went to a religious school from the age of 6 to 16. And I remember in my first year of being there, and like we still had like our religious classes, right? And I remember like having a discussion with like the other kids, and like they were all talking about it after one of our Bible classes or whatever. And I remember saying, like, do you believe this? And, like, then, like, like, a lot of them, to be honest, like, a lot of my classmates ended up, like, leaving agnostic or atheist anyway. But I remember at the time, like, they were like, oh, yeah. And I was, like, I had, like, this very internal struggling moment where I was like, yeah, but I don't. Like, I don't think any of this is real. I think it's stories.
Were you, like, the only one that's like, am I the only one that sees this?
No, it wasn't that, because I didn't even feel, like, comfortable expressing it. Because, like, all the teachers were religious. And, like, apparently at that point, all of my classmates, like, believed it as well. So I was like, oh, God, am I, like, just some weird dude who doesn't get it?
You're the one guy in the cult who sees through the cult.
Apparently at the time, but... Yeah, and then, like, like I said, like, by the time it all wrapped up, everyone had already gone through it. But to go back to, like, to the question that you're talking about, I think the first time we learned about other religions would have been... I have one memory of, like, we, like, briefly, like, had, like, one lesson on, like, hey, man, so Judaism is a thing. And then, like, that was it. I don't think that we ever went into any of the other religions at all. I think we, like, we had, like, one class where we learned about, like, Jewish history. And, like, maybe some, like, the Nazis were a thing, guys. And then that was about it. So
you had one class where they're just, like, mention offhand, oh, by the way, Jesus was actually Jewish, but we don't talk about that.
Well, because also, like, we weren't even, like, a Christian school. We were a Lutheran school. So, like, it went a whole nother level to it.
Doesn't seem like a particularly healthy way to approach teaching of religion.
Our religion classes weren't. They weren't, like, classes designed to teach us about religion. They were, like... A lot of the... Actually, after grade 7, they basically just turned into, here's a free session to work on whatever schoolwork you had. From, like, grade 6 and below, it was like, actual, like, studying Bible passages or whatever. But, like, yeah, once we hit 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever, they were like, you got more important things going on right now. Maybe we'll, like, mention something in passing, or, like, we'll do the thing where we go into, like, the Holocaust briefly. And remember, like, even in our history classes, it was never... Like, we never delved into any of that kind of stuff. Like, we had enough of, like, Australia's whitewashing to deal with. We didn't have to go into the world's things.
Because I actually, like, chose to do religion in secondary school, because religion was a compulsory subject for us from when we're, like, 12 to 15, but then not after that. You can do it as an exam subject after that. And I was like, I enjoy this. I'm going to do it as an exam subject. But then that's actually, like, legitimately teaching religion, teaching you about Buddhism and Islam and all the fun religions of the world. And, like, there's a whole morality side of it over here, which is actually quite interesting when they talk about morality and philosophy. That, it's a good little subject. People should do it in school. It's actually quite interesting.
Especially if they teach you more than the one that you're teaching.
That's true, especially if they're not just like, there's one religion, and there's a bunch of other ones, but they don't count, they're not real.
That was really the attitude of it, I felt. Like, I think I have a vague memory of one of my teachers going, well, other people believe other things, but, like, they're wrong. So, I remember, like, as a kid, I was, like, very hung up on death, and, like, what happens after death. Which is funny, because, like, that probably came with the nihilism of not being religious at all, you know?
It's a combination of not being religious and having near-death hurricane experiences.
Yeah, well, it probably was a bunch of that, but it's like, I remember, like... Yeah, well, because like, you're surrounded by it and you're told this one thing, and it's like, well, what if I don't believe that thing? That leaves a whole big doubt in the back of my mind now. And I remember I went to our school pastor, and I was like, hey man, what happens when you die? I'm kind of hung up on this at the moment. And he's like, well, you believe in the word of the Lord? And I'm like, yeah, And I didn't have the heart to say, nah. So she's like, so you'll be fine. I'm like, okay. So I left that meeting way worse off than I went in there.
I like that. It's like, you believe in the word of the Lord, and if you're like, yeah, but no, really, what happens when you die?
Yeah, but like, I get the bit, but like, what's the actual answer here?
For real, though.
But yeah, I do like religion as a topic of discussion. It's just, I don't know if I subscribe to it.
I like the way they were like, this is going to be a relatively shorter episode, so let's talk about 9/11, religion, and hurricanes. Mm-hmm. The three things that really warm people up and get people going. So yes, as we were mentioning, they didn't run an episode on 9/11. They didn't run an episode the week before on September 4th. So they were to come back on the 18th if they found funding, which they did. We mentioned at the end of the last episode that TNA ran into Dixie, who was their publicist, and she was just like, hey, my daddy has lots of money. Maybe he'll buy the company. So they spent most of the month of September negotiating that deal. It still wasn't even signed by the end of September. So that tells you like how long and arduous the process was. On September 3rd, they all went down to Dixie's house and office in
Dixieland.
Yes, literal Dixieland, the Panda Energy offices in Texas.
What about Surgeland, huh?
Yeah, I was actually surprised. It's like Dixie's already married to Surge at this stage. They're already the couple.
I like Surge and Dixie. I don't know, man.
We'll be seeing Surge a lot on TV. He's responsible for a lot of the banger theme songs we'll be talking about. He performs on some of those.
I appreciate. What does Surge do
in TNA?
In life, like what was his job?
I have no idea. He is a musician, but I don't know what he does as a job.
Was he successly at music, and that's why he was like chosen for this round? Or I assume he was chosen because it was Dixie's husband.
Yes,
like he's did he have like a history in it, or was he? I don't know. We'll do a Surge retrospect. Surge, come on the podcast. Be our fifth guest.
Chad and Surge, they can come on together. They can talk to each other.
Yeah, we'll rehash memories of NWA TNA episode 12 and 13. Wait, 13 and 14. Wait, whatever.
So they went down to the Panda Energy offices in Texas. They talked to Bob Carter, Janice Carter, who is Dixie's mom, Todd, who's Dixie's brother, Dixie, and her husband Serge, and all of the people, the marketing director, the corporate attorney, CFO, human resources director. They sat down. They had a meeting in the offices where they mostly talked about like wrestling in general, introducing them to like the broader concept of wrestling, to their history in wrestling. They talked a lot about Jeff and Jerry in particular's history of wrestling, because Jerry would have worked a lot with Vince McMahon. And it's actually interesting to read Jerry's book, where he's just like, I'm actually quite worried that they didn't talk about our presentation. I was annoyed that we didn't get to our presentation as fast as we did. We were talking about all these other things. It threw me for a loop.
He was ready for like an actual business meeting and not. So here's what wrestling is.
Yeah, it's like, so tell us about Vince. What's Vince really like? You worked for Vince.
Was Dixie a wrestling fan?
Like she says she was, that she grew up and she saw like bits and bobs of it, and basically, I think it goes back a lot to the same thing that we were talking about with Richard Scrushy, where he was just like, I like Jeff Jarrett. Like Dixie liked and knew Jeff Jarrett. They lived in the same apartment complex. They ran into each other. They then hired Dixie as years later as the PR for Impact or TNA. And she's just, and they probably saw the opportunity. It's like, well, if we do have a successful wrestling company, AEW, if you look at it at the moment, are firing on all cylinders, selling out 10,000 seat buildings, they have huge TV deals. Like, wrestling can be a lucrative business if you get it right. It's just so many people don't get it right.
I think we mentioned that like Bob was a fan at some point too.
Yeah. So he's in the wrestling business, and he did say that Jeff and Jerry, based on this product, the wrestling business. I'm like, dubious. But
do you think the Jarretts, after like they got all this done and signed and whatever, were like, these fucking idiots? Look at we got them wrapped around our finger. They're gonna dump all this money into TNA. We got them. Like, do you think that was the attitude coming out of it, or like, thank fucking Christ, we've made it?
I think it's more of the latter, and I think it's more like Panda took a lot of the debt off of the heads of the Jarretts, and I think at this stage that's what they were worried about.
Debt too, right?
There was like 1.6 million that they would have been liable for to Health South that ends up getting written off in the negotiations of this deal. That I think they're a great deal relieved that they're not liable for that debt anymore. I think that's like the stage that they're reaching here. It's like, there's a lot of money that's going to come down on us if this actually fails. And obviously we can declare bankrupt, but they no longer became liable for a lot of that debt. It either got written off or renegotiated in the process of dealing with both Panda and Health South, because Health South were a shareholder and had a lot of money in the company, and so a lot of the negotiations were basically Panda playing hardball with Health South, where there's like, you invested that 1.5 million or 1.1, and there was a 400,000 letter of credit as well, which they did keep on. They were responsible for the letter of credit after that. But the 1.1 million that Health South put in, that they were like, hey, we want our money back. Panda are just like, nah, you put that in knowing the risk. You should take the loss. And they did end up taking the loss. It ended up, the way they negotiated it was basically Panda would buy the company, they would fund the tapings, but they would also get 51% majority share in the company. So then that would leave the Jarretts with 49%. And then the Jarretts had to tie up a bunch of loose ends by giving Health South 5% of their cut in exchange for the debt that they had, and giving 5% to their lawyer as well, because she threw a fit and was very upset that Panda basically wanted to cut ties with everybody the Jarretts were working with, because Panda were like, oh, your accountants, your lawyers, all of that gone, we'll deal with that from now on.
But to be fair to Big Bob over here, TNA had at this point shown a weakness in that aspect of their production. You know, their behind the scenes characters being involved in things that, you know, ended in lawsuits multiple times.
Yep. TNA is a company that is less than 3 months old and is already involved in, I believe, at least 3 lawsuits.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, I can understand Panda coming in here and being like, yeah, you guys clearly can't handle this because you're fucking it up at every turn, so we'll take over that part of it too.
You guys take the wrestling, we'll take everything else, which is basically what it came down to.
Which is honestly what the money should probably do, you know? Like, I don't think Bushi Road was, like, coming into New Japan and being like, alright, guys.
Ghetto, you're in charge of legal. Jado, you're in charge of marketing.
Dick Togo, come over here and you'll be in charge of human relations. Let's go.
Yeah, we're going to put Toru Yano in charge of accounting.
Yeah, like, Goto, you're the lawyer now. I think they came in with like, hey, you know, we have all the money and the history and the thing. We have a whole infrastructure. That's the word I'm looking for. We're going to do this right, and you just handle the silly slap fights.
So that meeting on September 3rd, where they went down to Texas, they seemed to end well. Like Bob insisted on flying them home in the company jet, even though they'd already booked tickets home. Jerry took that as a very good sign. That he's like, take the company jet home. If you're doing that for somebody, it is like a meeting that goes quite well, isn't it?
Yeah, well, it also implies like you're a part of the company, doesn't it? It's like, take the company jet home because you're a part of this now. I like Bob. I want to learn more about Bob. This is going to be a Bob retrospective.
Yeah, Bob Carter, wheeler and dealer.
Yeah.
So they spend pretty much the entire month of September negotiating that deal. As mentioned, the Health South ended up coming out with 5% of stock. Panda ended up owning 51% of the company. Obviously, these deals have not been signed by the time, because, like, imagine, like, that must be torturous. A torturous experience to be like, all right, we're out of money, so we have to spend this entire month negotiating. And it seemed to be a great deal, a great source of frustration for Jerry. That's like, they don't have a hand to play here. Panda have all of the power and all of like the leverage here, because the Jarretts will go bankrupt. Like, it will happen if this deal doesn't happen.
So the whole time he's like, thank God these guys are marks for the business. Because that's the only advantage we have.
That they're willing to actually put money into this thing. It is wild that like they found 2 different investors. That's nearly always where wrestling runs into trouble, like finding actual people willing to put their money where their mouth is. And fair enough, Health South very quickly were like, we're no longer putting our money where our mouth is. But then they found Dixie, like as a stroke of luck through a Jeff Jarrett connection that became a stroke. I see what their wordplay. But like a stroke of random luck that this person that he knew from an apartment complex and then hired as his PR manager ended up just being like the source of a great deal of wealth.
It's a good representation of how business really works, isn't it? It's like you can go and do the schooling and do it all. Like, that's never going to be more worthwhile than just knowing the right people and building the right relationships with these people. That's going to get you further than like anything else.
Yeah, any know-how or any ideas, you just have to have enough people willing to give you enough money until it works.
But it's not even like necessarily like, yes, but like it's not even necessarily the money. It's like just knowing the people in the positions who can actually do the stuff, you know, from all levels, not even just, you know, the wrestling business. I think it's really interesting that like, at least at the start with like, and as you can see on the show notes, if you're a Patreon subscriber, how quickly things were happening every day for this company. Like, there was something new going on. It's like, shit, there's a new problem, or there's a new thing, there's a new solution, there's a new discussion. It's just constantly happening. September was a big year for them. Big year, big month. Felt like a year.
And yeah, especially because like they were actively negotiating this deal throughout the entire month. So as I said, there was the September 3 meeting, and then there was all of the details. And then every time they'd have to go back to Health South and be like, well, because Panda were originally like, we'll give them 150k and that's it. And Health South were like, no, they were owed 1.1 million. And eventually the Health South settled for taking 5% of stock instead. But yeah, they're like going back and forth between all of those, going to Panda being like, this is what Health South said, and Panda being like, no, that's not good enough, take this to them instead. And like the Jarretts are just this good like ping pong ball go between these people, trying to sort all this out, trying to get the like all of the parties that have a financial interest in this company at this stage sorted out and dealt with, so that Panda can actually buy the company and have a controlling interest and not have all these hangers on that they have to deal with. And yeah, it is like fascinating. Like Jerry's book is a fascinating like a business startup book as much as it is a pro wrestling book, where they're trying to get this thing off the ground and get this thing ready, and it's like written in real time. It's his diary at the time. That's the format of the book, which I think makes it very interesting, because like there's some days where it's just like, September 5th, I had a nice breakfast and had a good rest today. It was a good day. And then some days they're like, we had this horrible day of negotiations. It was the worst day of my life. We went back and forth between Panda and Health South 75 times until we could finally iron out this deal. I am so exhausted, and I still have to write a television show for this week.
And not to mention, like, as I've been like somewhat perusing what's coming up in the rest of the month, and he was dealing with like some terrible bullshit creative the entire time too.
Let's talk about the terrible bullshit creative.
Like, I'm reading this, and this is like
it's the worst.
Some of the worst shit I've ever seen in my fucking life.
All right, I'm going to preface this by saying I'm reading the words of Jerry Jarrett, quoting Vince Russo. So please,
yeah,
this is very
direct your hate towards.
So September 13th, you're mentioning, where he's faxed over a couple of pages from the September 18th show from Vince Russo, in which, quote, Russo had a storyline that had Brian Lawler accusing Jeff of raping Brian's girlfriend. The girlfriend then comes out and explains that it was not Jeff and the sex was not rape. A black wrestler, Elix Skipper, then comes out and says it was he that had sex with the girlfriend, and then says something like, once you go black, you never go back. Russo also had Brian and Elix cast as a tag team. That's just like...
It's so clear from like hearing how Jerry is writing about this stuff that he fucking hates Vince Russo.
He does. You'll get better quotes about it in later months.
He cannot stand Russo, and he cannot stand his fucking ideas. This is not the wrestling that one Jerry Jarrett wants to be involved in.
Because there's a whole section after that goes into, they had a clear the air meeting with Russo where they talked about the creative direction and all that after this just utterly horrific idea on so many levels. But
and then he comes back a week later with another fucking great idea.
Vince pitched an idea involving Truth, our NWA champion, and a KKK character. After about 5 minutes of his presentation, I interrupted him to advise that I did not like it and we needed to move on.
Do you think, like, Vince is like, hey, bro, Jeff, your dad's ruining everything. He won't let me have my great ideas.
Vince did that same routine in WCW, or his, like, standards and practices are ruining everything by cutting off shit like this. It's like, you can't just do a wrestling show, can you?
No, you have to, like, oh, God. He's like the epitome of Spike TV, isn't he? Just, just a horrid creative mind.
It's just, he's the worst, like, lowest common denominator shock value at all times. That's what this is built on. That's all he knows. And it's like, he can't build interesting characters, even though, like, he's not a bad writer, you know, in terms of, like, skits. He can write, like, decent comedy sometimes, but then he just writes all of this instead, because he has this brain that he apparently can't turn off, and it has to constantly pester him about horrible ideas like the KKK and making light of rape to make weird race jokes.
He reminds me of like one of these like Joe Rogan type stand-up guys.
Mm.
One of these like dude bro stand-up guys. And I wouldn't even compare him to Rogan, to be honest. Even Rogan's got some like decent stuff. I don't even want to talk about Vince Russo, man. He just annoys me.
Well, you're on the wrong podcast then. You're going to have to mention it for a while.
I'll start to become accustomed to it.
Yeah, there's some better Vince Russo burials in later months that I'm excited to get, because as you said, Jerry is still in the phase where he's like, obviously he's just woeful ideas.
Jerry's the only guy that I'm like on the team of. Like, I'm rooting for Jerry Jarrett. He's my hero in this story.
Because there is some quotes in the book where Jerry is just like, it's a shame he didn't learn wrestling from Vince, and Vince didn't teach him how wrestling actually worked.
Yeah.
There's some interesting notes in the book as well about how they're doing on pay-per-view. DirecTV basically said if they're doing less than 2,000 buys a week, they won't carry them anymore. And while they were averaging 2,300 before that on DirecTV, their most recent show, which would have been the last show of September, or last show of August even, dropped to 1,350.
Oof.
They're doing basically less than 20,000 pay-per-view buys, probably less than that even, again, if they're only doing, like, DirecTV is one of the biggest carriers along with In Demand, and if they're only doing, like, 2,300 on DirecTV, that tells you not doing particularly well.
Then, it's such an interesting... I guess it goes into the whole discussion that we were talking about on one of the other episodes, where it's like, is this format even conducive to making money at this point in history?
The answer is probably no. Based on the fact that they're drowning in debt and desperately trying to find finance, I think the answer is definitely no.
Thank you, Dixie.
There was an interesting note, because like the one thing I found particularly remarkable is just how much is leaking out of this company. Like, there's all kinds of stories every single month that we talk about on this show, just weird gossip and all this stuff. Just
To say they got a couple EVPs out there leaking stories.
The company is just a faucet of scoops, constantly dropping like weird tidbits. So on September 23rd, Jerry Jarrett held a meeting with all of the staff, phoned Jeremy Borash and Bob Ryder to talk about all the leaks, because he was very upset that it leaked that the Panda people were at... Well, it wasn't particularly Panda named, because all that was in the media was that they were looking for a source of money, but they didn't know with whom. But it did leak that the potential investor was at the September 18th show, and they were trying to schmooze them and impress them. And Jerry was very upset that leaked, because he was like, oh, I didn't want them to know that we were trying to schmooze them and impress them. I wanted them to think that that was the regular course of business. That was normal.
Yeah, it's a good show based on its merit alone, not that it was them being like, hey, here's our best foot forward.
So he called a meeting with the entire staff and was like, hey, no more scoops, no more leaking, no more like letting all of our information go on the internet. And it is interesting, like legitimately, when you look at like all of the TNA notes and like PW Torch and the Wrestling Observer after that, there is a decline in scoops. It did work.
I think it's because like they already had so many like people in charge that they didn't like. They didn't want to upset Jerry as well. They're like, oh, he's the one guy on our side. Let's just not stooge out anymore.
If it's not him, we'll all be answering the Russo. So
yeah, exactly right. Like, it's probably Ed Ferrara.
Well, Ed's gone.
That son of a bitch. Yeah, he bounced. Yeah, and you know where the scoops started drying up, huh?
Yeah, that makes sense. The timeline does add up. The last note in Jerry's book of that month is, September comes to an end tonight, and our state of affairs is more optimistic than it was last month. It looks like the Panda deal will work out, which gives life to the wrestling project. I like the way, no matter how far into this book he is, he always calls it the wrestling project, as if it's just like, oh, it's my little wrestling project that I'm sinking all of my life's earnings into.
Jerry seems like a nice dude. Mm-hmm. Should have taken over the Fed with the steroid trials.
Imagine that world. Where the Jarretts run the world.
Probably be better. It'd be a global force, you could say.
I think that'd be gold.
Oh, you know what? I think we haven't mentioned it, but I feel like it's a relative thing. Is that it came out that Jarrett was released?
Oh yeah. He was released from the Fed in April. That's a long time for him to be gone without anybody noticing.
Which does correlate with him like restating that Global Force Wrestling would be returning at some point.
And him launching his podcast and all that to get himself back out there.
I guess what we have to say is, Jeff, you want to start TNA 2? You know who to come to.
So I did include some notes about like what the media was reporting about TNA at the time, because obviously all these negotiations are going on behind the scenes. And it's interesting to see that like people don't know a ton about it. It does eventually leak out later in the month that there is a new source of financing and that like money is there and the company will be okay. But they don't know exactly with who, so it's not like, oh, they're negotiating with this company called Panda Energy. Like the note in the Wrestling Observer is like, the new source of money and with no official announcement of a deal is not a certainty as to exactly what the exactly what this officially entails. Is said to be from what is a huge... I'm trying to read Dave. I'm making the mistake of reading Dave Meltzer on a podcast.
All right, so Garrett, this is what you just have to do. Read the words with no punctuation intended. Just go, do. That's the only way to do it out loud.
I feel like I should add in a bunch of you-knows just to make it authentic.
And, like, paper shuffling.
It's said to be from what is a huge international company. Those within the power structure are giving a figure of money earmarked toward the venture at enough to keep going for years. Keep it in mind, but Dave is skeptical because he hears this all the time. But it did end up happening, so no reason to be skeptical, Dave, you hater.
Yeah, Dave, you're being skeptical about money coming into wrestling? Ugh.
He was like, it's close to final but not done. Budget is around 80,000 to 100,000, so everybody that took pay cuts isn't going to get their money back. Everyone that was paid 500 and cut down to 200 or 300 is going to stay at 200 or 300.
That's such a dick move. They just got, like, this influx.
It really is, isn't it? It's just like, you're going to get no money. We're doing fine now. Everything's fine. The company is secure. But are we going to pay you more? No.
No, it's not even, are we going to pay you more? It's, are we going to bring you back to what we agreed on? No.
But even then, others are taking pay cuts. Like, Scott Hall had his pay cut in half as well. So...
Well, they're probably not going to, like, look at that gift horse in the mouth, as they say. Mouse? In the mouth, as they say. Because, like, hey, we can not pay Scott Hall what we originally said. Let's not do that. I'm curious. Were they... From this Panda deal, were they getting a better influx of money than their original deal with the original sponsorship?
Well, they were certainly spending less money per taping. But you see, like, this is basically a bit of a reboot month, where it's just like Scott Hall comes back and Buff Bagwell comes back, and a lot of the people who, like, they didn't have money for anymore, they signed Sean Waltman, they signed BG James. So they are investing in star power, they are investing in talent, the shows are more cohesive. It's not the case anymore where they're just like, we can't book all these people because we can't afford them.
People from the fucking weeds are showing up now. People who left like 3 weeks into the original run are like coming back.
Mortimer Plumtree returning as a character on the show.
I don't know who you're talking about. I was making a general statement.
But yeah, like they are running on a tighter budget, but the budget is consistent and the budget is not like desperately needing to be cut every month. So there's like a consistency to it, even if it's probably not as much as they were spending toward the early days. Some other notes: Jarrett denied company going out of business in an interview because people thought like the lawsuit with Jay Hassman and Len Sabal was putting the company out of business. They're like, nah, we're negotiating new terms.
Oh, sorry, nah, we're probably going to win that. So
the office soured on the Briscoes. There's a fun note.
Boo! What a bunch of bitches. I'm not blaming Jerry for that. That's a Jeff and Vince thing. Jerry would never.
They went 2 minutes long in a dark match, and that put them in the bad books.
Oh, wow.
Another interesting note, again, the company flirting with American Dragon. The company is planning to bring in more names for the X Division, including American Dragon, Xavier, CM Punk, Colt Cabana, and Ace Steel. They did bring in CM Punk, Colt Cabana, and Ace Steel. I don't think Colt ever did a main show. He did Explosion, though.
I was going to say, I don't remember Colt, but...
I don't think he ever did. He did some dark matches and some Explosion matches, but I don't believe he did an NWA TNA match, off the top of my head. But yeah, still no American Dragon, even though his name is thrown and bandied about.
It's such a weird name to be flirting with but never go all the way. Punk and Steel are like, I think they're pretty obvious picks, you know. I like them both in TNA.
Yeah, we'll talk about them when we get to the pay-per-view. They're making their big TNA debuts. And like Punk would be a pretty regular character on the show for the next year after that.
Until someone else shows up to put him in his place.
An interesting note, Len Sabal was in a small lawsuit against TNA.
Of course. Who isn't in a small lawsuit with TNA?
So he won the lawsuit because the Jarretts didn't show up in court, and he releases this statement being like, this opens the way for Sabal to pursue recovery through normal legal means and mechanisms, including sheriff-managed seizures and liens and other methods against pay-per-view recovery, blah, 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 blah. And he ends it. While the Jarrett's complaints asked for damages not to exceed $10 million, the victory achieved today was for a different amount. And Dave Meltzer reported in the Wrestling Observer, he won $1,900 in travel expenses that he hadn't gotten paid. He releases this statement and it's like, this is a big victory in court between me and Jeff Jarrett, or the Jarretts. It's like $1,900 paying his travel expenses in the smallest claims court in New Jersey when the Jarretts didn't even show up. Again, there's reports that the potential investors are backstage at the September 24th pay-per-view as well. So, scouting things out. Another note, they're looking to launch a 1-hour TV show syndicated for...
Let's go, I'm ready.
For the debut of Explosion.
Every episode.
Which I believe actually does debut in this month, because Jerry mentions in his book that JB is doing a show where they do like highlights and dark matches that they air, which is the beginnings of Explosion. It wasn't particularly widely syndicated at that stage, but it was alive and well.
Are these shows able to be viewed?
They're not. If they were, we'd watch them. Though you were already giving out about having to watch 5 shows for next month, so...
Yeah, but I want to watch Explosion dark matches.
Because actually, yeah, it is very like AEW Dark, AEW Elevation when you look at the names of it.
I want to watch them.
Because there'd always be like 4 or 5 dark matches with a bunch of like interesting indie names where it's just like Chris Hero is on these shows.
Yeah, I'm gonna try my best to see what I can see. And
then back on the TNA being sued thing, Phase 3, the company that designed the JC and NWA TNA logos.
Which time?
Are suing Jarrett Sports because they didn't get paid money. So,
oh, come on, guys. Pay your artists. What are you doing?
Which is the same company that did the WCW promotional materials as well.
That's a fun fact.
So those are most of the main headlines from September 2002. The big one, of course, being further negotiation with Panda Energy to negotiate the buyout of the company, which was, I think, more or less agreed in principle, but not quite signed and a done deal by the time this month came to an end. So we'll talk about that more next month. And then there are just some other bits and bobs that happened that month. Nothing particularly big or notable.
I was just reading the intro where Jerry was talking about his night out on the town with the Carters.
Oh yeah, he's just had a nice day. Yeah, they took him out for a night in the town after the September 13th show. They all took him out for a nice day, drinks and dinner, and they were all happy out.
He went out and partied with Scott Hall and Sean Waltman. Scott Hall, Sean Waltman, and Brian James.
They introduced them to the talent that were like the big stars. So it was Waltman, Hall, BG James, Truth, and Jerry Lynn, who were like the ambassadors for the company as we introduced to the money. I
really like that, like, who do we have that can like scrub up and be these perfect representations for the company? And it's like Scott Hall, Sean Waltman, Brian James.
Yeah, that's the company these days, though.
But I suppose like they would have all probably had some experience in doing this kind of thing, schmoozing the money people working for the major companies.
They're workers. This is what they do. Yeah. They can work.
Well, I tell you right now, who's not there? AJ Styles. Who's not there? Amazing Red. Who's not there? Loki. It's all the workers that are there who have been in the business for 20 plus years.
Who can schmooze somebody.
And you know Jarrett was there too. Jeffrey Jarrett.
Also doing his schmoozing. He is the ultimate schmoozer, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't even know why you needed anyone else there. Just got Jeff there. We all met at, is that Virago's?
Yeah, Virago's, which is apparently a place in Nashville, I guess. Let me Google it.
I wonder if, let's see if it was a hip party destination.
Virago's is a pioneer of elevated independent restaurants in Nashville. Virago has constantly transformed throughout its 19-year history as the go.
Wow. Do they tout having the Carters and the Jarretts?
The birthplace of NWA TNA.
Yeah. Integral to the survival of Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, it's closed until 5 a.m, so we can't get delivery. Oh, it's a sushi restaurant.
Oh. Wonder what kind of sushi Scott Hall, Sean Waltman, Brian James, Ron Killings, Jerry Lynn, the Jarretts, and the Carters had.
That's such a strange group of people going for a dinner.
That is that's my ideal Thanksgiving. Like, I want all of those people.
Especially the Carters.
Yes, well, definitely the Carters. I want to squeeze my way into that family if I can.
Bankroll your wrestling project.
TNA 2.
So that does bring us to NWA TNA pay-per-view number 13 on September 18, 2002, held in the TNA Asylum in Nashville, Tennessee, with 750 people there, heavily papered. We opened the show. As I said, this is kind of like a reboot. So like you open the show with Scott Hall is back, and he has Sean Waltman with him, or Syxx-Pac as he's going by on this company, and like. There is a bunch of stuff on the show that's just like, we have all these new names and a bunch of old names that you, quote-unquote, liked, Buff Bagwell, are coming back, and our stories are kind of rebooting. So it does feel like a kind of reboot episode of the show.
It feels like a reboot, like, time in general. The first, like, 2 episodes on this month, it's like, oh, we're going in a new direction now. Some not for the best, because, like, it's funny, like, as they were running out of money, they were putting on, like, good wrestling shows, because they just had wrestlers go out and wrestle, and now it's like, we have money, we don't have to do that shit anymore.
We don't have to try, we're bankrolled. Oh, no.
Yeah.
We opened the show with a brawl between Jeff Jarrett, or a discussion between Jeff Jarrett and Brian Lawler, where it's like, they basically, I think, blew off the angle, because when Vince Russo was like, we want to do this dumb rape thing, and Elix Skipper shows up, it seemed like they're like, all right, we're blowing this off. Now Brian's just an abusive boyfriend.
A much more tasteful angle.
It is a much more tasteful angle of Brian being Just a horrible human being who again, it's just like wrestling. You do not need an abusive girlfriend story or abusive boyfriend story. We do not need to see like gaslighting and emotional abuse between a boyfriend and girlfriend on a wrestling show. That's just, who wants that? What does that achieve?
Well, the thing is, like, we always talk about is like wrestling should be allowed to do these kind of topics, but it's like, there's never been a track record of them doing it well or right or with nuance, so maybe they shouldn't.
Steer clear. Stay away from it. Never do it again. I do find it interesting that this is a reboot show, they're bringing everybody back. They don't bring back Ed Ferrara, so...
I think Ed was probably like, I'm out of here. I'm going to go teach creative writing or get my degree in creative writing. I don't know what he was doing at the time.
Jeff Jarrett is in the ring with Bob Armstrong and the Bullet, and they do a little brawl. They do a little brawly poo, and before the Bullet finally reveals himself, Liam, to be shock of all shocks. It's the Road Dog.
I'm gonna be stuck with this guy for like 7 years.
Yep, he doesn't leave till 2009, so you're gonna be watching a lot of BG James over the next 7 years.
Yay.
Like, I will say, during this era, they probably need the star power. As much star power as Road Dog provides.
The star power of the roadie.
Yeah, like, he is a name, though. It's not a particularly good one, but he's a name.
Sure. I'm sure there was other options out there.
Was there?
I don't know.
None that they can get.
Bring in Scott Norton.
There you go. That's the solution to all the problems.
I mean, literally.
So, that's BG James making his big debut. He will associate himself with Hall and Waltman for a while. They do kind of an angle there. Again, it's weird because like the Skipper stuff, there's a bunch of stuff about Skipper and Lawler being together on these shows, but because they cut the big reveal about the horrible thing with the fake rape and the Skipper thing, they just end up being a team on the second show for no particular reason at all.
Yeah, it's like a weird Planet Jarrett is what we end up with at the end of this month.
Yeah. So we get ourselves some weird stables. We're into Gang Wars Euro of TNA, of course.
I think I've decided that Planet Jarrett is one of the best stable names of all time.
Well, the world does revolve around him.
I know. It's perfect, though, isn't it?
That was a good... Like, there's a lot of talent in that stable other than Jarrett.
Yeah, and that people are just cool with being in a stable called Planet Jarrett.
Yeah, well, to be fair, Monty eventually... Well, we'll get to it in 2006, but Monty being in that stable always annoyed the hell out of me.
Yeah.
It just made no sense. It made no sense at all.
Especially with their history that we've established in the NWA TNA.
So, Sonny Siaki cuts a promo with his Elvis friends about how they're going to support the Jerry Lynn in his main event world title match against Ron Killing.
I hate this.
Why? Why do you hate Sonny Siaki?
No, not Sonny Siaki specifically. I hate this whole, the X Division has to root together against the real wrestlers because we have to prove ourselves. And they have never not done it. They've done it for like 2 decades. The same story of like, look at these fake play wrestlers trying to step up to the real boys.
Yeah.
It's just annoying and it makes everyone look like shit and... This might be the best they've done it, though. They may have like peaked it the first time they did it, and then they should have just never done it ever since. Because at least coming out of this feud, the X Division champion did beat the world champion.
Yeah.
But it's like every time, it's just like all the teenagers are teaming up against the adults.
It does have that vibe, doesn't it? Look at these kids.
And then like half the kids still hate each other while they're doing it.
Well, the entire point of the Siaki promo is he's like, we're going to support Jerry Lynn, and then he screws them. So.
Yeah, well, that one I'm fine with. I meant more like, the Kid Cash angle, and then the Styles was still being a weird pervert. The whole thing.
Styles is very, particularly in the second show, there's that AJ Styles interview.
We'll get to the Styles a bit.
Oh boy, there's a ton of Goldilocks on these shows as well. It's like there's going back to backstage interviews after every single segment. So
what's Goldilocks doing?
Goldie is the biggest star on these shows, apparently.
Yeah, but what's she doing in 2021?
I don't know, interviewing people.
I hope so. Goldie, if you're out there, hope you're doing well.
Which brings us to our opening match. AJ Styles defeated Kid Cash in a really fun little X Division match.
I really enjoyed this. I like Kid Cash, and he did some cool, stupid shit in this match.
Yeah, he's like just doing double springboard ranas and running tornado TTTs and cool dives. He's a cool wrestler.
Yeah, and he was smooth as hell on this show too.
I was about to say that's the thing that kind of differentiated himself, even from like the Lokis and the Amazing Reds, who are like spectacular in a way, but they don't have like that just sheer level of polish that Kid Cash has. And it's so fun to watch Kid Cash just nail all his shit and be like the best wrestler on this show without ever being pushed.
And the problem is, like, he doesn't really get his push until, like, he returns in 2011 to 2014. I forgot where
No,
it
he
was.
gets an X Division title push. You don't judge this.
Oh, no, I don't know. I know nothing.
Your favorite wrestler returns, Marcus Bagwell.
I mean, and then he kind of fucks off again immediately after.
Yeah,
so.
I'm pretty sure he's not brought back again after this until like 2003. I think he does like a gauntlet or something, and then he does the Sting Let's Make a Deal thing in 2006. But it is fun. It's like, we're bringing back Marcus Bagwell for this big story.
You say things like, he does the Sting Let's Make a Deal thing in 2006, as if I know what the fuck you're talking about.
It's just to lay the seed, so when we get to the Sting Let's Make a Deal thing in 2006, so you'll be like, oh, that's what you were talking about.
You say it as if, oh, everyone knows the thing I'm referencing.
Yeah, everyone does the Sting Deal or No Deal parody he did with Jeff Jarrett in 2006. Come on.
Everyone knows.
But yeah, Marcus Bagwell is back. He's teaming with BG James on this show in the Gauntlet for the Gold, the crowned new tag team champions after Styles and Lynn were stripped of the tag team titles. It's a very strange, weird team of Buff Bagwell and Road Dogg, but we'll allow it.
Buff Dog.
Yeah, because like they did the story where he's like, I'm not Buff anymore, I'm Marcus, and then he disappeared, and then he comes back here. And it's like,
And then he came back and he's Buff.
No, he's still Marcus here. He's still like, I'm still Marcus. I'm still sad, but then he disappears again.
And he also completely betrays the character by doing exactly what he said he wouldn't do in the match.
Yes. He does all his Buff stuff. He does all his posing and, as Ed Ferrara would say, hot dogging. And
Grandstanding.
he's still Buff. He can't escape the Buff. That's his woe. It's like a curse placed on somebody. It's just like, you cannot not be Buff.
He's too buff.
You should pass on the Buff curse to somebody.
Yeah.
And they too will be bizarrely muscular, but in a weirdly shaped way.
Rob Terry.
No, he's just bizarrely muscular, to be fair.
Buff Terry. Buffy T.
With Robbie E. That's what his name should have been. Everyone's favourite Saved by the Bell star, Dustin Diamond, better known as Screech and Saved by the Bell, showed up.
I mean, who gives a single shit about this?
There is a quote before this show where Jarrett's like, we got some big Hollywood stars showing up. And to be fair, there is a bigger one coming in later months, but Dustin Diamond's not a big Hollywood star.
No, I didn't know who he was.
How do you not know who Dustin Diamond is? How do you not know who Screech is?
Saved by the Bell isn't a thing here.
But like, never?
No, it's never been a thing here.
But it was revived.
Okay.
To be fair, yeah, Saved by the Bell went off the air in 93, which you weren't even born. So,
like, not even close.
I still don't know how you don't recognize Screech. That's wild to me that you don't like recognize him.
I didn't even know what a Screech was. It's a terrible name.
It is not a great name. But why do you hate Saved by the Bell? What do you have against it?
Who gives a shit? Who cares about fucking Saved by the Bell?
Mario Lopez.
I mean, congrats. I like Mario Lopez.
So and you didn't know where Mario Lopez came from?
No, he was the E guy.
Oh.
And then he's like smoked weed and did commentary on the Triller show.
Well, there you are. That's Mario Lopez's career.
That's all I know. Oh, and no, and he's like, isn't he like the he's in the KFC thing, right?
Is he?
Yeah, isn't he like the Colonel in the KFC thing?
I don't know.
Like in the like upcoming movie thing that they're doing?
Oh, is he?
I think so. He's like a TV special dude, I think.
That would be very strange.
Maybe I'm making this up, but I hope not.
Just imagining these things.
Yeah. Anyway, who gives a fuck about this?
Yeah, Screech defeated Tiny the Bellkeeper in a boxing match.
Tiny took it. That was it was a terrible worked punch. The crowd ate it up. Didn't eat it up. But like that was fucking stupid.
Yeah, Screech isn't a natural worker.
Or anything.
Because he was doing celebrity boxing at this stage, which is the reason they did the boxing skit. And even then, surely he should have learned how to throw a punch while doing celebrity boxing.
Tiny should have fucking shot on him.
Tiny would probably beat the shit out of him. Tiny looks like...
Yeah, he looked like he fucking would.
Tiny is one of those guys who's like quiet and you're like, Tiny, I can pick on him. Then you pick on him and he beats the shit out of you.
This Scratch fellow doesn't even look tough at all. He just looks like a dude. He looks like fucking Shaggy from fucking Scooby-Doo.
The Scratch fellow.
Yeah, that's what he's called.
Yeah, him being... To be fair, Tiny also doesn't look particularly menacing, so...
Yeah, I mean, but Tiny at least has a bit of oomph behind him. I feel like he'd push over this Dustin.
So there's Liam being forced to be introduced to Screech.
Yeah, whatever. Go to the cool debut.
Jimmy Rave and Derek Wild. That's the one you're talking about, right?
Yes, of course. Oh, let's talk about the fucking hot shots for a second. These fucking morons.
Yep.
Going backstage, putting their fucking spot up in the tournament on the line for literally no reason, and then losing it like a bunch of idiots. Awful people. Just bad, dumb idiots.
The way this match is structured, it's a 3-way match between the Hotshots, Cassidy Riley and Chase Stevens, Jimmy Rave and Derek Wilde, and the debuting CM Punk and Ace Steel. CM Punk in the news lately.
For what reason?
There's no reason at all at the moment. Just the idea of himself sent 10,000 tickets, I believe.
Over 10,000 at this point.
The scent on the wind of CM Punk sells over 10,000 tickets.
I hope it's an Ace Steel debut.
Yeah, or just Punk and Steel. I'll take them together.
Yeah, why not? Well, as we saw on the Patreon live watch, the first person I noticed was Ace Steel.
And then Liam was very excited to see CM Punk.
Yeah, because Punk's cool.
So yeah, as we were mentioning, this match is formatted so the person who is pinned is eliminated from the tag team gauntlet for the gold. So 2 teams will go through, 1 team will go out, and yeah, as you mentioned, the Hotshots were pinned and went out like a bunch of nerds.
You know what they should have done?
Not done this match.
The person who was pinned should have got removed from the match, but their partner should have been allowed in it still.
Oh.
So they could still win it for them.
Battle against all odds.
Yeah.
There was a bunch of interviews about the tag team title gauntlet for the gold. AMW had an interview where Harris is like, listen, you're a great wrestler, Storm, but you gotta do it tonight because I hate your cowboy shtick.
But respects him as a wrestler. That's always been the important thing. He always thinks he's been a great wrestler, just hates the shtick.
There was also a Hall and Syxx-Pac interview where they came to the ring. They talked about, and it's actually fun to see them like reminisce about their 1-2-3 Kid and Razor Ramon days. It's like it's weird to see like nostalgia for that in 2002, but obviously it makes a lot of sense.
Also, it's like refreshing to have them be nostalgic about that instead of the fucking NWO.
It is to go back to like the early WWF and be nostalgic about that instead of not early WWF, but early 90s WWF. The WWF existed much earlier than that.
When the WWF first formed in 1992.
When you had your big Scott Hall and Sean Waltman matches. But yeah, it's fun to have that kind of nostalgia. Ron Harris and Brian Lee tried to attack him, but they were laid out. And there was a cool freaking Razor's Edge on Brian Lee.
I like Brian Lee. Brian Lee's getting over with me. I don't like his friends, though.
He does associate himself with horrible people. He should stop doing that. He should associate himself with a different kind of horrible person, the demonic cult.
Of course.
Hermie Sadler is back. How do you feel about the return of NASCAR?
He had a cool DX hat.
Yeah, so Hermie Sadler comes to the ring. He's TNA sponsoring a car in one of his upcoming races. Bruce does his female fan shtick. He beats the fan, or he's going to attack the fan after the match, and then Hermie makes the save as the valiant hero Hermie Sadler, beating up Bruce.
I hate Hermie, and I hate NASCAR, and I hate it all. Get it off my screen. Bruce is the only good person in this.
At least Bruce continued to get booked through the reboot.
He's the women's champion, so... Has to.
That is true. He is technically women's champion.
I am like I don't know how I want to phrase this, but like there's some like not so nuanced like gender politics going on with Bruce, and I want to make sure that I'm on the right perspective of it, because like he does refer to himself as a woman multiple times, but like it's never like acknowledged beyond like that. So I legitimately don't know how to handle the character from that way. Like I don't know, because like is the heat supposed to be that like it's not genuine,
or is the heat supposed to be that
it's just that?
Yes.
You know what I mean?
And I think the heat is supposed to be it's just that.
So like I don't know, what pronoun should I be using for Bruce? And I don't even mean that in a joking way. I mean like legitimately.
But like this is 2002. That's not a thing they're even thinking about at that stage.
Yeah, but like it's that's the thing when you're coming back with 2021 eyes on a 2002 product. You're like, because that would be something I'd be very courteous and cautious of now. You know.
And this is a character they could not do this way now for so many reasons.
Yeah, it's an interesting look through the looking glass, as they say.
Imagine if you tried to bring up that conversation to like Jerry Jarrett in 2002. It's like, so we need to talk about his pronouns, Jerry. It's like, excuse me, what?
And also, is this a good representation? You know,
and that's just not a thing they're considering.
No, definitely not at the time. Then we got a terrible, boring gauntlet for the gold that I hated.
Yep, so the teams in the tag team gauntlet for the gold were Scott Hall and Sean Waltman, the SATs, Jimmy Rave and Derek Wilde, Jorge Estrada and Sonny Siaki, Cobain and Slash, CM Punk and Ace Steel, Brian Lawler and Disco Inferno. Ugh, shudder. Bob Bagwell and BG James, Ron Harris and Brian Lee, and James Storm and Chris Harris. Yeah, it was a very long, boring match with a lot of not particularly interesting wrestlers in it.
It was fun to see the SATs in there with like Scott Hall.
Yeah, Scott Hall working with the Maximos. Yeah, that was a good time.
Yeah.
And I think Sean Waltman was probably the best worker in the match.
He's been great in everything he's been in.
He's a really good wrestler.
Yeah.
But the right team won. That's all you can ask for. Chris Harris and Brian Lee were the final two, which meant that they came down to the match between America's Most Wanted and Harris and Lee, which AMW won to become the second ever tag team champions of the TNA era.
It was actually a really good little week-to-week story booking from Jerry. Because it was definitely Jerry that booked that.
All the good stuff is Jerry, all the bad stuff is Russo. That's canon.
And the middling stuff is Jeff.
Yeah. The next week I am sick of this Harrison Storm against Harrison Lee feud because they go back to it again for a tables match. But here, yeah, it's a fine little like 3-week story where they do the angle where they win, they beat them up, they get them into the match, and then they win the match.
AMW's still not cool though.
No, because they're still doing the I hate you, they're still doing the cowboy stuff, and they do eventually just become a cool Southern tag team that are the best team in the company.
We see what they feel like now is like the bad times of Beer Money when they were like too jokey.
And like there's a period where I think the crowd are almost on the verge of rejecting them, I think, at points, but then slowly come to embrace them.
I'm looking forward to... I legitimately, one of the things, coming into this, I'm very excited at actually having a base of knowledge about America's Most Wanted.
And like it does go back to the problem that we mentioned, that like AMW, one, they're very unlikable because they can never get along, but two, like there was stretches where they just disappeared. It's not like they were featured acts the entire time. There's just weeks where they're
Seems
not
to be
there.
the James Storm theory, huh?
Yeah.
He just like fucks off TV for 4 months at a time.
I believe that's the Fiend theory. Jared also attacks BG James, leaves him bloody.
Who cares?
There's a fun note that BG James left the building wearing the bloody rag he wore after the attack in hopes of selling the local fans on the injury, so he's a true worker.
I'm sure it would have worked for a couple people.
He's like, oh, BG's really hurt.
Yeah. Like, why else would he wear that gross towel on the way out?
Which brings us to our main event in which Ron Killings defeated Jerry Lynn with the NWA World title on the... I will say, I think they did these matches backwards.
Yeah, but I understand it was champion versus champion. They want that to go on last.
No, I mean the Lynn and Killings matches backwards.
Oh, they should have had Lynn beat Killings the first week and then lose to him in the...
Yeah, it should have been the X title match that Lynn wins the first week, and then he gets the world title shot because he beat Killings. Because here, why is Jerry Lynn getting a world title shot?
Because he's... Well, to be fair, there is a precedent to be set of just random dudes winning, like getting shots too. So it's like
that's true. But if you're gonna they decided to book back-to-back Killings and Lynn matches, they should have done them the other way around. This is where he should have won, and then the next week is where they should have cost him the match. But yeah, Killings won. There was a big brawl after the match between Killings, BG James. There was a little interaction between Ron Killings and BG James, where like BG didn't immediately embrace Ron, so Ron attacked him. Ron is like, we used to be friends, but you didn't.
He was gonna admit it. It's like, oh man, that's my friend, and then he just like walked past him. He's like, oh, fuck you, man.
Just jumped him because Ron is back to being a heel, which I think he was a baby face toward the end of last month.
Yeah, well, heels and faces don't count here, man.
In an interview on the Get in the Ring radio show, when he was asked, "Are you a baby face or a heel?" Ron Killings replied, "I don't know what the hell I am now."
Yeah.
So Ron didn't know whether it was a face or a heel.
You can say that about like 70% of the people on this show.
Yeah, they literally jump at any given moment in any different segment. It's just no consistency whatsoever. But yeah, that's NWA TNA pay-per-view number 13. I think it's an okay show. It does feel like a reboot. It does feel like they're trying something new. Well, not really new. It is kind of more of the same in terms of like the kind of product they're presenting. But it does feel there's like a sturdiness to this show and a lack of like, I don't know, horrible panic because they're running out of money to this show that didn't feel like was there in August.
Jeff looked noticeably better.
So he's relieved. You're happy with Jeff?
Well, I think he has an inkling that money's coming in.
And he actually wasn't on the show a ton either.
Yeah. He's probably too busy fucking running deals.
Yeah, on the phone with freaking Health South and Panda the entire day during the show and schmoozing. Yeah. He's just like next to Janice Carter all night, just being like, "Oh, Janice, this is great, isn't it? You're having a good time, right, Janice? Janice, say you're having a good time, Janice."
He has to listen to fucking Vince's terrible fucking ideas all day. So
his dad gets furious at the ideas, and then he has to make peace between his dad and Vince while negotiating this horrible deal between Panda and Health South, and also having to wrestle. Well, he didn't wrestle on the show, but he had angles on this show. Fun time for Jeff Jarrett. And like, there's an interesting note that there's a few weeks in August where he didn't get paid because Jarrett's being paid as a wrestler and also obviously as an owner, and he went weeks without being paid. And Jerry's like, "Oh, that can't happen." So I assume Jeff's probably getting paid again, which is nice.
Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, as owner and being paid to be wrestler.
Jeff Jarrett stays winning.
Yeah, there was the discussion at the Voices of Wrestling Slack about the degree to which Jeff Jarrett stays winning, and the consensus at the end was he had to lose a lot in order to win as much as he does.
Which makes him a working man, you know? Working man's champ.
He is truly a man who can get himself another opportunity after losing his current opportunity. So that brings us to NWA TNA pay-per-view number 14, September 25th, 2002, in the TNA Asylum. 1,300 people there, even though it was papered. So that's their best crowd in the Asylum, and I think maybe ever, at least in a few weeks.
It felt like a big show.
Yeah, and like I don't even know why, because I'm looking at the show and there's not. No, it's the big Jarrett and BG match, I guess, is the big one there, getting people in the door.
People hanging from the rafters for that one.
Oh boy. So the show opens with a big brawl between Sonny Siaki and Jerry Lynn, because Siaki cost Lynn the match against Killings the week prior, as we mentioned. So they are feuding. That's an X Division title feud, I suppose.
I suppose it is.
Siaki is now, by the way, full non-Elvis. He looks so much cooler as well. He's wearing like regular gear. He's abandoned all the Elvis stuff, and he's just Sonny Siaki.
Well, we'll see how he abandons the Elvis stuff later on.
So Siaki defeated the Amazing Red, despite being jumped by Jerry Lynn before the match. Poor Red being squashed, but a nice little match.
I don't really remember a lot about it, to be honest.
It was a good little open. I enjoy Siaki. As I said, there's very little I enjoy more than Power Juniors against small guys. And then...
Oh, so, yeah. That was fun. And then some Red's... Red's always fun to see too.
He is.
I like how much of a loose cannon Lynn feels at this point. Like, because not even just from the Siaki thing, but, spearing AJ out of his fucking boots at every opportunity, to attacking people backstage, dropping them on their head, all that kind of stuff.
And it is interesting, like, that's a character for Jerry. Like, Jerry Lynn is normally considered a little, like, timid and plain and laid back and kind of not a particularly dynamic character. And yeah, on these TNA shows, he's just beating the hell out of anybody that wrongs him.
Yeah, which is, like, a cool Jerry Lynn character choice. I was actually talking about it today, but it's interesting to see how heavily featured Lynn was at this time for someone that I never really considered a TNA guy. And it's and that's a good misconception, I guess, in my head that has evaporated over this time period, is because like Lynn has been a major focus of this show.
He is one of the 2 first champions. I think he's probably main evented more episodes than anybody else. He's certainly up there. So yeah, Lynn is a big featured act in the early days of TNA.
Which is something I don't think really gets played up a lot.
I think a big reason was like he's obviously one of the most experienced guys in the company, but he's also good. Like there's a lot of people who have experience and aren't particularly good, as opposed to Lynn, who's like a great wrestler, and you can put him in the ring with anybody, and he'll have a good match with them because that's what he can do.
I was gonna say he also is really good at bringing good talent up as well. So like when he's in there with an AJ or a Loki, he's really good at like bringing those guys up to being their best possible at that moment,
Even probably Ron Killings to an extent.
Yes, because I really like these Killings matches.
After the match, Jorge Estrada came out and demanded that Sonny Siaki return his Elvis costume.
And we'll see if he agrees.
Yeah, because he's abandoned the Elvis ways. He no longer loves all of the Elvis things. What's your favorite Elvis song,
Is
Liam?
Yang still an Elvis?
He is, but he's too busy in Japan, so...
Blue Suede Shoes.
Is that actually your favorite Elvis song?
It's the first one I could name.
Are you not an Elvis fan?
I know well a hound dog.
I'm a big fan of Suspicious Minds, but I think it's Lilo and Stitch's fault. Or
I don't know any of this shit.
How do you... So you don't know Screech, you don't know Elvis. What do you know?
I know who Elvis is.
You're just like, I've never heard of Elvis before. I just thought he was a character on NWA TNA played by Jimmy Yang.
Is he not?
Yeah, I guess he is technically, yes.
One of the more recent adaptions.
In a feud that cannot end, but I think this is the end. But thankfully, this was as I said, this is the point at which I'm just sick of seeing Harrison Storm against Brian Lee and Ron Harris. And yeah, they have a tag title tables match.
Too many Harrises.
There is, and like Mike Tenay mentions, he's just like, oh, Harris against Harris, Chris against Ron, oh, and then Don comes out at the end. So there was all the Harrises in this segment. Lee is knocked through a table. They attack them after the match before Don Harris comes out and breaks it up and gets face to face with his brother Ron. We're doing a Harris Brothers program.
If these guys weren't both alleged Nazis, I would be into this.
It's just big guys hitting each other.
Yeah, and like I'm a sucker for some brother v brother stuff,
So we go backstage to, I think, my favourite pre-tape in the history of TNA. Where Bruce pulls up the building into a parking space, gets out of the car and he's about to have an interview, before Sarah, the ticket lady, is like, hey, you cut me off. This is my parking space. You saw me there. And Bruce is like, no idea what you're talking about.
And then they had a fun interaction.
Yeah, Sarah slapped him.
Slapped him twice. The first one was a little meh. Second one, she laid it in.
And then they had like a pull apart. The security separated them. Like Sarah and Bruce is the hottest feud in the show.
Yeah.
I do like they're like, let's put the ticket lady. Let's make her a character on the show.
She's fun. I like Sarah.
Yeah, later in the show, weirdly, like this.
Yeah.
I have no idea why this segment is cut off Impact Plus.
My guess is that there was a chant at one point that was maybe even a little much.
What was it?
Even compared to the other one. I don't want to say it.
Oh, I don't think I noticed it.
I think there was a little one, and then there was in response there was a little miming of an action from Bruce.
Oh.
So I think maybe that could have been it, but like it feels like a stretch compared to like the other things that they've shown on this show. But you know,
Yeah, because like Bruce comes to the ring, he's doing his routine where he's like, "I'm the best fighter and woman." Then Sarah comes out and like wants to fight him, but they don't let her. They should have let her.
Yeah.
But
well, she wouldn't sign the paper.
that's true. She wouldn't clear herself of all of legal consequences of whatever Bruce may do to her.
I'm so curious as to what the payoff for this is.
It's TNA, Liam.
Oh, is there no payoff to this?
Like there's a sign in the show that has like some homophobia that's blurred, which makes sense.
There's some weird signs. Oh, we got to talk about the signs on this show.
Sure, talk about your virgins and Chad signs.
Yes, in a truly remarkable effort, TNA Chad has been combated by TNA Virgin. The TNA Chads versus the TNA Virgins is a real thing that actually came out of this. I am so astounded by this. Also, seemingly, that TNA Virgin was sitting next to members of the TNA Chad gang because there was a TNA Chad sign right next to them as well.
So are you saying that this is literally a crowd feud, gang wars in the middle of the crowd?
I think it's a crowd feud perpetuated by friends.
Right.
I think it's a work.
Are you saying all of this Chad stuff that we've invested in, all of it is fraudulent?
I'm saying Chad himself is a remarkable worker.
Oh.
And now he has brought in his friends in an attempt to get everyone over.
That's good. That's generous of Chad. That he's willing to be called a virgin on I was going to say national television, but kind of national television. National in inverted commas for the 10,000 people watching this show, but he's willing to get his friends over.
Not to mention the budding love story we saw throughout NWA TNA Pay-Per-View 13.
Oh, where Chad has a lady friend making signs with him.
He has a lady friend and they're making signs together. Which is, I assume, the furthest you can get with Chad, considering signs are his life.
That's true.
That's that's a deep emotional connection to have, so... And there was scissors, because, he cut a hole in one of the signs, and he was making it during the time, so he clearly had scissors on him. It's a weird dynamic to the TNA Chad storyline, but I'm looking forward to seeing how it progresses. Probably will have a natural conclusion, unlike anything else on this show.
You know where there's the Know Your Meme page, where it's they explain all the memes? Do you think we'd be able to actually sell somebody on editing that, the Chad versus Virgin meme as, originating from TNA? It's
literally the first time I've ever seen it in real life, so...
This is where it came from. We're making it canonical.
Technically, yes. If you can provide a case of Chad versus Virgin from before September 18, 2002, I'll listen to it.
I'm going to try and... I'm not sure, is that an editable page, or is it editorial, or does someone control it? But if it can be edited, I'm going to put in mention of the Chad.
Yeah, I have both the photos of the signs, so...
You do have proof.
Well, it's documented.
Back to wherever we were on the show. Oh yeah, BG James. So Ron Killings comes out and he cuts his racism is bad promo again, where he's back to being a heel by calling out prejudice.
Boo!
I at least do like the touch that Ricky Steamboat disappeared right after giving Killings his title shot, and he is why'd that happen? Why'd they stop bringing Ricky Steamboat here once he gave me a title shot, huh?
Yeah, he's not wrong. Fucking Ricky just gone now.
It was a nice little narrative bow to put on that, even though Ricky doesn't really appear anymore. But they made it make sense. So that's all you can ask for it, isn't it?
I mean, it's better than not explaining it.
Killings is I have no merchandise. Ken Shamrock got a private dressing room, but I don't. What the hell's going on? Before, quote-unquote, voice of reason, BG James comes out.
Listen, if there's one thing I want to hear about, it's BG James's takes on race.
Yeah, I think BG James has a bunch of nuanced and interesting perspectives on systemic racism.
And also the character.
It ended with them fighting. They don't get along. The old getting rowdy aren't pals anymore.
Get rowdy.
So
see, it's a multi-generational student-teacher thing going on with Jeff, the roadie, and K Quick.
Teaching him how the world works. We go backstage to Brian Lawler with April, his girlfriend, where he's gaslighting her and telling her to stand still and not be doing anything. And it's...
What a good story.
It's a story, that's for sure. AJ Styles defeated Loki in a 2 out of 3 falls match, which you gave a staggeringly high rating to. So
4 stars.
I gave it a gentleman's 3. So tell me about why you liked it.
I loved AJ in this. Mm-hmm. AJ's little character things, he's like got his cockiness in full blown, the mimicking of Key's strikes and doing the big kicks on it, and just, really good X Division action. I really like this one.
I believe this is like one of the best matches in TNA history, according to you.
Yeah, but to be fair, there's been like 3 good matches in TNA history, so...
All of them involving AJ Styles and Loki, but...
Yeah. Well, no, the Dups were also there.
Oh yeah, the Dups do have a 5-star match, that's true.
A 4-star match, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm the accurate star rater on this podcast. You are the curmudgeon star rater.
We actually know that that's not true. Have we seen your ratings?
You are the hater, whereas I am the accurate star rater.
He says at my 4-star rated Styles Loki match.
Yeah, and I want to give it a gentleman's 3. Yeah, I thought this match was fine. The effort was there, but I didn't think it was like particularly blow away or anything.
You know what? The one thing that I was a little disappointed about was it already feels like they're cycling down Loki again. And I don't like that because he was actually getting over to a meaningful level. And as they said during the match, that again, I can only go with my predictions and such of what I've seen from the show. So this could be fucking wrong on the next show. But they said in the match that whoever loses this match would end up going down to the bottom of the rankings because they've each had their chances and this is their last shot at it basically. So it seems like he is being cycled down for now.
Yeah, but TNA can only stick to stipulations like that for a week, so they'll get notions and push him again.
Again, I'm watching as if I watched this week of TV in September 25th, 2002.
Which is the way you were actually watching it, so it does make sense. Yeah. You were not just being obtuse.
No, I can only talk about what I've seen because I don't know what else happened.
Your ignorance is authentic.
Yeah, well that's the whole shtick, isn't it? You're the TNA Chad and I'm the TNA version.
Jeff Jarrett's upset about not getting a title shot. He's still moaning about it.
Just give this man a fucking title shot already. Jesus. It's just so he shuts up about it.
And technically he has had a title shot. That's what Gauntlet for the Gold was. Get over it, Jeff. You lost.
Yeah, but remember, he didn't even want to do that at first, so at least he's consistent.
Scott Hall and Syxx-Pac defeated Elix Skipper and Brian Lawler, who are teaming together for reasons that don't make sense, but we explained them earlier. It was a nice little match. I enjoy Hall. I think he looks very good, and Sean Waltman is the best wrestler on any of these shows. So
also having him in there with Park is good, because Park can do some more wrestling.
I hate the Syxx-Pac name.
I mean, I guess I don't care.
Just call him Sean Waltman. It's fine.
Just call him Syxx.
Or Park.
Just call him Park, the man that Gravity forgot.
I do believe Gravity did forget Sean Waltman.
I like Sean Waltman. I'm also glad he got his shit together, in real life.
Yeah, because the entirety of his TNA runs is basically him getting opportunities and him blowing them. So, because there's a quote after in PW Torch, Sean Waltman told friends that he is in for the long haul with TNA, which, spoiler alert, he wasn't. But
well, he probably thought he was at the time, to be fair, and they probably thought he was too.
And it just didn't work out that way.
But we'll probably get some cool Park matches.
We do. We get a lot of them in October. You can look forward to them next month.
I am looking forward to them.
AJ Styles.
Okay. Weird sex pervert?
I have no idea what he's doing. So he's backstage in an interview with Goldilocks, where he's challenging...
I'm going to post the GIF right now to the Twitter, because I posted it on mine, but I'm going to post it.
I'll cut the video out as well, just because it has to be seen. It's
remarkable.
So
he twerks.
He does.
He throws that ass in a circle. I deleted the GIF, damn it.
TNA invented twerking, and TNA invented the Chad and Virgin meme. So TNA is very on top of things ahead of their time trends. But he's doing this interview about how he's challenging Jerry Lynn to a ladder match next week for the X Division title. And he, as you said, he's gyrating, and he's weirdly dancing and kind of sniffing Goldie.
Right, and sniffing Goldie. Yes. But he's when he does his weird twerk thing, he also just looks like a horse.
What I think is actually happening here is AJ Styles has probably been accused of being bland and too boring as a performer.
I'll tell you exactly what it was. It was fucking Vince Russo. It was Vince Russo going, "Hey AJ, we need you to be a thing."
Yeah, and he doesn't really have a character as a heel other than just a douche, which is enough. He's a cocky jerk. That's all you need. You don't need him to be a weird sex pervert.
I love this, like, tonal thing that's like every time we say the word pervert, we have to say sex pervert specifically.
As opposed to the different kind of pervert.
Like, I think I gotta give a shout out to, like, Chuck Taylor and Trent for, like, permanently changing my vernacular. Because I cannot call someone a pervert. It's either a sex pervert or a straight up pervert.
Or to be fair, there's also knife pervert.
The knife pervert too, but that's a classic one at this point, eh?
But yeah, like, I do think this is just AJ being like, I need to show charisma, and this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah, but you know it's because someone went up to him and said, hey, I need you to show more charisma. And I know who that person is. It was Vince D'Ambrosio.
So the crux of it is that there will be a ladder match next week between AJ Styles and Jerry Lynn. It's very typical of TNA. It's like the Styles, Lynn and Loki match got a ton of love and a ton of hype. So they're just going to do ladder matches until the end of time. I think there's 2 in October. And they did already do the Shamrock against Sabu ladder match. So there's like 4 ladder matches in TNA history already.
I mean, I like the ladder stuff though, so I'm fine with it.
Yeah, ladder matches every week. You get a ladder match. And you get a ladder match.
Sorry, I was looking at the Irish Olympic gold tally.
Oh, we have 1.
You have 1 gold and 2 bronze?
Yeah. To be fair, I think the bronze is a tentative
one bronze and then 2 total is what you got.
No, we do have a bronze, but it's not cemented yet. It's a boxer who's in a semi-final fight, so he is a guaranteed bronze, but he could win more.
Oh, well, I hope he gets gold because I don't think we're in it.
We had the Bruce and Sarah segment. We had Jorge Estrada defeating Kid Cash, and what I actually thought was a bit of an
Fun
upset.
match. Well, they're clearly going into something with him and Siaki.
Yeah, so they have to push Jorge.
You know, I feel like Estrada's never won, but I really like this match. That was a banger.
Yeah, it was a nice little match. I preferred the AJ match, but I thought this... What did I think of this match?
I obviously preferred the AJ match. Oh, you meant the AJ Cash match?
Yeah.
Yes, I still prefer that one too, but I thought you meant the AJ Key, and I'm like, yeah, well...
Important story development here was Sonny Siaki throwing the Elvis suit in the trash.
And almost legitimately setting Goldie on fire. Like, way too close to that fucking bin.
Goldie should get hazardous duty pay every single week on these shows.
Like, those motherfuckers clearly put petrol in that shit, because that shit, like, went up. And, like, you could hear her genuine reaction at almost being burnt.
That adds to the authenticity of the performance, Liam. That was
Yes, because it was legitimate.
Yes. Yeah, so Estrada and Siaki is a feud that will continue. Speaking of feuds that continue, Jerry Lynn defeated Ron Killings in an X Division title lumberjack match. My favorite thing being Jerry Borash accidentally introduced Ron Killings as the reigning and defending NWA World Champion, and Mike Tenay immediately like, no, this is only a match for the X Division title.
That's why he didn't come with the belt.
I'm pretty sure, legally speaking, by being introduced as reigning and defending, that means Jerry Lynn should be NWA Champion now, and he was screwed.
The new linear NWA TNA champion.
He might be. We haven't been keeping track of that, but I feel like the champion's already been pinned on one of these shows.
NWA World Champ? Probably not.
Yeah, Shamrock never lost. Killings, I suppose not. Yeah. So I think this is the first split between the linear champion and the actual champion. But yeah, nice little match. Jerry Lynn bled a bunch the week before and didn't bleed any here, so that's good.
Fair enough. Lynn's getting like over though. He's getting signs in the crowd now.
Yeah, because he's like the most pushed act on the show, and they finally decided he's a babyface.
Well, they decided that about like a month ago, to be fair, but it was a tumultuous month before that even.
They finally settle on who he actually is. And then in our main event, a match straight out of like 1995 WWF, BG James defeated Jeff Dart by DQ when Skipper interfered. Then we had a big schmoz where the stable, quote unquote, of Jarrett, Skipper, and Brian Lawler. Jarrett and Lawler, who are apparently friends now, despite Lawler trying to kill him for a month.
Because he explained it away, that it wasn't him.
Yeah. So, and then Lawler's just like, fine.
I believe you. Because he said we're friends since we were kids.
That's true. He did invoke their childhood friendship to get Lawler to stop.
And also, like Skipper's there.
Also their friend. Yes. Bizarre.
I watched this, but I don't remember anything about.
Yeah, it was just a generic house show style main event that you will never remember anything about. And then Jarrett, Skipper, and Lawler left Hall Pack and BG Lane. That was the show.
That sure was the show. Somehow with 2 shows that we did, still almost hitting 2 hours on this.
Yeah, we're on an hour 40 record time now. That'll be cut down and edit. But yeah, because we talked all about religion. You can't help yourself.
You know what they say, there's 3 topics you should always talk about when broadcasting. Religion, sex, 9/11.
They're the important things you have to cover every single week on any given podcast.
Wait, are you ready to see our takes on them next week, huh?
Well, in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
This is every 2 weeks.
Actually, no, we'll bring it up on Monday.
We'll bring it forward. Yeah, that's the show. That's NWA TNA in the month of September. It's a fine month. As I said, it's kind of a rebuilding month. They're kind of just back to doing what they're trying to do.
Rebuild, reclaim. What was the other one?
I don't know.
What was Seth's thing? Rebuild, reclaim.
Do you think I know Seth Rollins' catchphrases?
Rebuild.
If you do it in the voice, it'll come to you, yeah. Thank you so much for listening. If you would like to support the show, you can subscribe on Patreon at patreon.com/kiddingme, where, as we mentioned, you can see our show notes, you can see our star ratings, you can listen to Monday War Games, where we talk about the 2010 Monday Night War. You can watch
Redesign, Rebuild, Reclaim.
That's terrible. Rollins, go away.
TNA.
You can redesign, rebuild, and reclaim your Patreon spot at patreon.com/kiddingme.
Can't do any of those.
You can follow us on Twitter at TNA History Pod. You can follow me on Twitter at Garrett Kidney. You can follow Liam on Twitter at The Gleet Muta. Thanks for listening. We'll see you in 2 weeks, covering October 2002. And goodbye.
It's going to be a spooky episode because Halloween's in October.
I would say you could wear a costume, but you know.
I will.
Good. I'll dress as 2002 AJ Styles.
I'll dress as 2016 Seth Rollins.
Oh, no. See you in 2 weeks, everybody.